Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Hey, welcome aboard to our Houston Sports Talk live Texans postgame show. Great to have everybody along. Texans dropped this one 38-20. Robert Land alongside my co-host, Sports Radio 610, Shaun Bijani. And we have a special guest, Jayson Braddock, and I'm sure all you know him from his years at Houston Radio. He's also hosting the Houston Football Show with Aaron Wilson. Find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. Great to have you on, Jayson.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. Always great, Robert. We've been knowing each other for years. Shaun, we've been knowing each other for years as well. Robert, I've been hopping on your podcast for years. So now you and Shaun doing this. I've been looking forward to doing this. So appreciate you guys having me on.
You know your stuff, and we need you for this one because a lot went on in this game. The Texans looked pretty good for about 3 quarters, Jayson, and then it all fell apart. But I'm just going to start with the positive because why not? We don't get to start with many positives with the Texans. And Davis Mills, who was this guy? Who was this guy, Jayson? This is the Davis Mills we wanted to see. And except for that one pick six at the end, you know, the one blemish up for the whole game, Davis Mills looked like a whole other guy than we've seen all year long.
Yeah, and it's good to see, especially on the road. We all know the splits now for the home and road and how much he struggled. And this is his best road game of his career. Went over 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Interception came late on a pick six. You're absolutely right, Robert. I mean, Mills was playing well, but we've seen him play well as a rookie. We've seen him play well at times this season, especially the last couple of weeks going into the bye. The problem is that when the pressure's on, then we see those issues. Even there in the first half, he takes a sack, an unnecessary sack there. Then after the Raiders really start putting it on him, then I think it's a 3rd and 9 when the pass got batted, if I'm not mistaken. He's got Dorsett wide open back to his left. Dorsett's jumping up and down. He throws the ball to his right, stares it down, gets it batted, stares down Brevin, gets it picked off for a pick six. And it's not a coincidence. This keeps happening late in quarters when things are going wrong, and especially in the fourth quarter. They got outscored again today, 21-0 in the fourth quarter. We're 7 weeks into the season. We're past the bye week. There's no excuses. The identity of this team is what we've seen all season long.
Shaun, I know Jayson just outlined all of that stuff, but I just have to say, Davis Mills, I just loved a lot of the throws that he made. I loved how he handled the pressure, how he moved away from guys at times. He made some really good throws throughout the game. He made 3rd down throws, 3rd and long. What? Davis Mills, 3rd and long?
Yeah, the Texans overall were pretty darn tremendous. Davis Mills in particular on 3rd down at one point, he was 6 of 8 on 3rd down conversions with 2 touchdowns. You mentioned he was making plays with his feet. I noticed he seemed to be a little bit more comfortable stepping into the pocket. That probably had a little bit to do with some of the protection that he was getting to. Max Crosby was in their face all day long, and he had to try to do everything he possibly could to extend plays and or get rid of the ball quickly. There was one in particular, I can't remember, maybe you guys do, who he completed the ball to, but he rolled out to his left and threw on the run. I don't know if that was Cooks, if it was
Dorset.
That was the Dorset 25-yard touchdown, wasn't it? That was a 25-yard touchdown where he rolled out to his left. I thought that was one of the best throws all season long. And he's made a couple of those guys when he's in motion and trying to extend a play. I thought that was a really big-time play by him. He made a couple of really big-time throws in the game today. I thought the one that he threw in the right corner of the end zone early was a really good ball. Unfortunately, it was just the route. The ball kind of took him a little bit too far out of bounds. Otherwise, that would have been a highlight reel play in itself. But Davis Mills surprised the hell out of me today. The Texans, to be honest with you, surprised the hell out of me today. We saw a big-time dose of Dameon Pierce early and often, which I thought was a great game plan. They worked Dorsett into the game plan, which we haven't seen in a handful of weeks, at least. You might sprinkle them in here and there, but I thought Pep Hamilton and Lovie Smith and really just this Texans team seemed to figure some stuff out during the bye week. Unfortunately, just not enough They didn't get a turnover today. They probably should have had at least a couple. Just things didn't go their way, just a little bit out of position, or just luck was not in their favor. But I thought all in all, like, we saw a lot of improvement today, Davis Mills in particular. So I'm excited to see what they can do to build on this going forward.
Yeah, the defense, that's a whole other story. And really, I feel like that was more the storyline of where things unraveled for the Texans. But just a reminder before we get going, because Jace, we always like to go through these possession by possession and see where things went well and things went poorly. But we've got everybody on YouTube. We need you to comment because we want to hear from you guys and what you think about what happened. And we're going to talk about, if you got some good observations, we're going to questions, whatever, we're going to get to that. That's how you can support us, is by doing that, and subscribe as well. Make sure to look for our midweek show with the latest Houston sports conversation, me and Shaun, every single week. The podcast, we're doing shows 3-4 times a week, at least. The Astros post games we're doing as well. I'll be doing one later tonight, weather permitting, with the Astros. So let's get to it. Possession by possession. Raiders first drive, guys. They go down for a field goal. Early in the drive, Malik Collins knocks out Derek Carr for a play. A very rare early blitz for Lovey. Would love to see him mix this in more often, Jason. If nothing else, just to give a team a different look. We haven't seen much as far as blitz goes early in the games.
No, I mean, that's what stood out to me. Is me too, Robert. They brought 6 on that play, like you said, early in the. He's able to complete it, but that's just Carr staying in there. Pressure's all around him, and like you said, Malik gets there, makes the hit that knocks him out the game for a play, or for them to take a timeout, I should say. And put in a final thought on Davis Mills. I think Shaun said so many great things about what Mills did well in this game. One other area, one of the announcers on the live broadcast was mentioning when he was getting blitzed, he was 8 for 8 at one point deep in the third quarter. But like we've seen far too many times, it's more than Davis Mills as a team. The glass slipper falls off in the fourth quarter. I mean, is when it happens every single game, even after a bye, 7 weeks into a season, it becomes who their identity is, and you start to begin to expect it and wait for the collapse to happen. I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead. There's just so much on this that it was bright early on, and then just like the Texans have done this entire season, they've been able to snatch defeat out the mouths of victory.
Texans first drive, and one of the great upsets in sports history. They actually moved the ball down the field on the first drive, but on 3rd and 9, it was we're settling for a field goal screen pass, Shaun, to Brandin Cooks, and then Fairbairn misses the field goal. Of course, you play to lose, you lose.
Yeah. One key note on that 3rd and 9 is I think that was the first, and the Texans, with their 2 or 3 first third down opportunities, took Dameon Pierce out of the game, brought Rex Burkhead in, which I thought, oh man, here we go again. But Dameon Pierce, we can get to him later, obviously showed his ability on some third down conversions and why he needs to be considered more in some of those higher leverage situations, possession by possession. But yeah, the screen pass to Cooks, I mean, you got to be able to do a little bit better than that blocking wise. I don't necessarily hate the play, but Cooks never had a chance to pick up that third down. So that's what bothered me the most on that is, you were driving the football and you hit Akins, on a 3rd and 4. Pierce gets some extra yardage, after being able to break a tackle, make a guy miss and bounce outside. It was looking like the Texans were going to be able to really do something there. And that's really kind of what it came down to, guys. There were 16 possessions in this game, the last one notwithstanding, with the Raiders ending this ball game. Only 4 of them combined by both sides did not result in points. It was going to come down to a couple of things, and that was who's going to make the first mistake. Unfortunately, it was the Texans. They turned the ball over. And then 2, who is unable to consistently convert on third downs. The Texans did a hell of a job today, just not enough. They needed to play an almost perfect game, and unfortunately, things come unraveled for them.
Jason, why are the Texans so consistently bad on screens? I feel like I've been watching the same replay over and over again since year 1.
Yeah, a lot of it's got to do with personnel. Week 1, we came out, we saw Justin Britt just trying to get way outside those reach blocks to the point where you're throwing a screen out there and you need your center to get past that second level, get out there, and they don't have the athleticism. Quesenberry doesn't have the athleticism, but I mean, he's the best center they have on the roster right now. And so a lot of it is they're just not good enough. I mean, the clearest way I can say this out of all the years, and we've all watched football for more years than we care to admit, but out of all the years I've watched NFL football, I've never seen more parity in my life. And we all know, as you know, the NFL's been wanting to get towards parity for years, trying to get there, always talking about how many are these one possession games when the game goes final and all that. I say that to say this: they've created the parity, they've lengthened the season. Teams aren't really implementing their offenses and defenses and getting live reps in the preseason, so they're taking those reps in season. Two things are happening. There's no chemistry being built until the 4th, 5th week of the regular season. And when that chemistry starts getting built, there's so many injuries are happening. Look around the NFL today. People were dropping like flies. It's not a coincidence. And it's what the NFL's made that they're going to lay in it. And I say all that to say this. Let me put a finality to this. All this parity in the league, there's only 3-4 really good football teams. Everybody else is just man. The Texans and the Lions are the worst out of all of them. The worst team in the AFC just beat you by 18 points today. So, I mean, at this point, with the trade deadline 9 days away, I think we see where this is headed.
Yeah, and we just went through the whole Easterby thing in the last week or so, and I mean that's kind of where things got left with the Texans. I mean, we knew they were in a big hole, and the Texans relied so much on young guys, first and second year players, because you had 4 drafts that basically netted you next to nothing, and that's where they are right now. Next drive, Texans defense, a 3-and-out. Rasheem Green's sack, the big play. Green also with 2 tackles for losses in the first 2 possessions. People forget the Seahawks picked Green in the 3rd round just 4 years ago. The only thing that slowed down Green's pro career is medical issues. And Jason, you might remember this. He was considered one of the best guys in the draft, and medical stuff sort of pushed him down. And otherwise, you might really have something with this kid.
And they need him. They need him real bad because they have no pass rush. They brought in Jerry Hughes. They brought in Mario Addison, and Lovey had some comments, and I'm paraphrasing here earlier this week, what he's talking about. Well, it's not all about the numbers, the sacks, and all this. Well, in this case, maybe not always, but in this case, it's definitely about those numbers because the film says the same thing. They're not getting there. There's no pressure. And then when you're playing so much zone, these vet quarterbacks can sit there and find their spots. And also, Robert, you bring up an excellent point about all the youth playing, and this is the perfect year to do it because you're not going anywhere. You're not playing anything. Let them get this live on-the-job training. Christian Harris, you got to take the bumps with him just like you're still taking with that touchdown, what was it, 2nd and 7? He hits Matt Collins right between Jonathan Owens and Jalen Petrie. Well, that's on Petrie. Petrie starts to go underneath, and even the announcer, I'm not sure if it's Adam Archuleta or whoever was calling the game today, he even points this out several points. He did a very good job talking about the struggles of the Texans linebackers and what we've seen all year long, but to hear it nationally and them see it live and call it out to the entire audience, it's good to see. And then when Lovey came out of half, he also said that was a rookie mistake. It goes back to Petrie. He's still making those mistakes, but it's going to happen. Their upside's so huge. And what's the downside now? You've got the 2nd worst record in football, the Cleveland Browns, who you own their pick. You and the Lions are the only ones with a worse record than them two. So you could possibly end up with 2 top 3 picks. That's where the focus goes. Getting on the job training this year, see what you have in these guys, and continue to find future collateral.
The Texans take advantage of the field position on that defensive play by Rasheem Green, and Davis Mills' nice work on the drive ends up in a Mills to Moore touchdown. And Mills' TD pass is big enough, but he did it on 3rd and 9, Sean. It's probably the best first 2 drives of a game in Mills' career.
Yeah, I think the Texans had 4 big-time 3rd down conversions on that 13-play, 62-yard drive, which ate up a lot of time on the game clock as well. And they were trending towards winning the time of possession, which I thought was going to be vital for them if they had a chance to win this ball game, which early on and even in the second half, they had every opportunity. to do just that. But that was one of the most impressive drives that I'd seen just by a Texans offense in a couple of years, to be quite honest with you. Maybe it was a little bit more so. I'm feeling better about it because it was Davis Mills, and we haven't really seen much of anything with that productivity. But I was impressed, and that made me pay attention and perk up a little bit more going forward in this game. And unfortunately, the Texans, that pick six, if Davis Mills doesn't telegraph that pass, I mean, we could be talking about a much, much closer football game. Might even still be playing right now. You never know. I know it's an 18-point game, and the Texans have a lot of their faults, highlighted by much of what you said, Jayson, and you are spot on. But, in a game, it does come down to a handful of plays, and seemingly with this Texans squad this year in particular, they stand out like a sore thumb. Okay.
If they can shoot themselves in the foot, Shaun, they do. And they did it the next drive because the Texans force a punt thanks to a big pass breakup by Steven Nelson, third down. And I mean, they find a way to do it. 3rd and 2, Davis Mills, hey, he put the ball right in Brandin Cooks' hands. And Jayson, he dropped it.
He did. And I mean, I think that's his fourth. It's at least his fourth drop. It may be more. And you're talking about critical moments. Beginning of the season, he goes 3 and out to start the season, get off on the wrong foot because of a Brandin Cooks drop. Then the next 3rd down, he comes back on a Chris Conley crosser. And yes, it's a low pass at his knee. This is a guy who's inexperienced. You're a vet wide receiver that makes millions of dollars to catch footballs. You catch that. And they just pile on. Philip Dorsett, who struggled with drops and timely penalties and only had 1 catch coming into this game, he dropped the touchdown. You know what I mean? And then he just saved himself by fighting around, getting back in, and he did a great job to get it back, but he dropped that. The comeback, when Shaun's talking about Davis rolling out to his left, we know he rolls out to his right and is so deadly accurate, but when he rolls back to his left and hits Dorsett on that comeback, the thing that sticks out to me is Dorsett's catching all arms, all body, trapping it in here because he doesn't trust his hands. And then later in that game, what my eyes told me there, I saw again with Dorsett dropping a touchdown and getting lucky to go and catch the bobble and bring it in. He's got limited weapons around him. There's issues on the interior of the offensive line, but he also gets the whatever you want to call it, gets the yips, gets a little shook in those big moments, and that's something that's still concerning. He's got the rest of this year to see if he's the guy, and he may not have a lot of weapons around him the rest of the year. He may not have his top 2 receivers that we saw today for a long part, depending on Nico's injury and how the trade deadline plays out with Brandin Cooks.
Yeah, Nico with the groin injury, the old Arian Foster groin, and those never last just a few days. So I expect he's going to be out for a little bit. They're going to make sure it doesn't get any worse. And I mean, I'd be shocked if it didn't take at least 2 or 3 weeks for him to come back. The Raiders' last offensive possession of the half, Derek Carr hits Mac Hollins for a 26-yard touchdown pass, tying the score. But before that play, there was a 3rd and 2. And Jayson, I thought of you when I saw this play where the Texans, for the umpteenth time this year, they didn't bother to cover the running back out in the flat. Christian Kirksey appears to be the culprit most of the time.
Yeah. No, you're dead right. You stated it perfectly. There's really not too much from me to add. And he hasn't really been called out a lot. And when we've asked Lovey, you don't want to go into a press conference and say, hey, Christian Kirksey's look bad. You want to ask the coach and let him. And Lovey's pretty straightforward with you. I don't think they've been as straightforward with Kirksey as they have with some of the other linebackers. Kirksey's been an issue this year. Kirksey was an issue this game, and he got called out on national TV multiple times for it, not getting there, not flowing to the back. It's frustrating to watch, but with the mistakes we saw with Christian Harris, the dude barely played with the injury all year in his rookie year. And so he's coming back. More excited about Christian Harris's upside and what he did, some of the physicality, how he takes on blocks. The mistakes, I expected that, and I frankly expected more of that. So it's good to see him out there. Garrett Wallow flashes a couple times. The face of the linebacker group is youth.
Yeah, Christian Harris, I kept an eye on him. It seemed like around that drive for the touchdown was when they started to play him on a regular basis, and then he was out there a lot at the end of the first half. and then that first touchdown that the Raiders had to start the second half. And Shaun, I don't know if you were noticing much, but it felt like he just didn't know where to go. He wasn't in the right place. He was taking some angles that were kind of bizarre. He was just missing guy. It was just a lot of different things. And they were costly because they were plays that seemed like it was always finding Christian Harris. He was always around where things were going on and things were going bad.
Christian Harris, I mean, just keep in mind, as good as he was at Alabama, the guy still hasn't played an actual football game in 9 months. The last time he played was in a national championship game, and he was an absolute beast in that loss to Georgia. So I know the guy is going to be a really good football player. He just needs to get caught up to speed. And everything that we kind of heard over the course of the last couple of weeks coming into this game in regards to Christian Harris, the Texans played it very close to the vest. I was a little bit surprised to see him, probably like many of you were, so early in this football game. But him being out of position and maybe looking a little lost in some of those instances, it's not a surprise to me. I mean, you can't simulate that in practice to any degree with the way that they do now. And so I think it's going to be on him and the Texans staff to get him back in the film room and look at some things and see where he needs to improve in terms of maybe areas of attack, getting off of blocks, maybe not giving up so much leverage if in fact he does have to, fall into coverage on a little bubble screen or a little shallow route. Look, he missed a tackle that, I'm not going to kill him for, that ended up, I think 2 plays later, the Raiders converted on a third down. If, in fact, he would have made that tackle, they would have been facing like a second and long. You can nitpick all you want to, but the fact is he's been practicing for 16 days. It's the first time he's played football in a long time, missing most of training camp. So I'm going to give him a lot of the benefit of the doubt here. And I'm just glad to see him in pads and on a football game field for the first time in a really long time.
Yeah, well stated there, Shaun, and add a little extra context on what you said about that missed tackle. He goes from not really practicing, missing all this time, and again, to add the context, who he missed that tackle might be the best wide receiver in the NFL, and Davante Adams. So you go from zero to Davante, you know what I mean? So I think Shaun did a great job illustrating, what he's dealing with, and then realizing that you're missing on Davante Adams also goes like, man, he was just playing in an Alabama game, and now he's got Davante Adams in the open field.
Mm-hmm. Josh Jacobs, no slouch either, and he was ruining the Texans left and right. They opened the second half, though, with a nice drive, the Texans do, but their old bugaboo gets them. Pierce loses 4 yards on first down thanks to an unblocked defender. They get behind the sticks, so that means it's Rex Burkhead time. He takes a short pass, gets him to 3rd and 10. And it looked like Mills had nowhere to – it just didn't seem like he had anywhere good to throw. When I watched the replay, it's a little behind Brevin Jordan, his pass, which leads to a Fairbairn field goal. Anything that stuck out to you guys with that particular drive to start the half?
I'll jump in real quick. The Brevin pass didn't bother me because he had Diablo, number 5 for the Raiders, underneath in coverage. So he has to put him behind him a little bit because he comes a little bit more with Diablo underneath. That's another pick right there. So he put it there, gave Brevin a chance. I thought Brevin, and again, let's add context to us. He's coming back. He's been banged up all season long. He's coming back. The chemistry's not there with him and Mills. And kudos to Jordan Akins because it is there with Akins. Akins looks amazing. Keeps making plays every week. You can't make excuses when they do it consistently. But Brevin, he was a hot route one time. The ball goes whipping by his ear. He doesn't adjust when his man comes off the blitz. He doesn't realize he's the hot. So there's still a lot of miscommunications in the offense. When we watch live, a lot of time we blame the quarterback. But I think Brevin really struggled with a lot of the chemistry stuff. We saw Nico struggle on early in the season, and we saw Nico come on before the injury as well. So I'm sure Brevin will pick it up as well, too.
Yeah, just one thing for me, on that particular drive and really through the first 3 quarters, it was the chunk plays that the Texans were able to get on that drive alone. They had a 39-yarder to Akins and a 20-yarder to Philip Dorsett. I thought that was pretty impressive. And, just a little bit ironic, too, and maybe keep an eye on this because, Robert, you make a good point. With Nico's groin injury going out, leaving the game today, they showed a graphic during the game. He's second in the NFL for what is it, 18.1 or 17.9 average per catch. And granted, look, that 58-yard bomb a couple of weeks back certainly helps that. But, I mean, my gosh, Nico Collins wasn't a part of a lot of the chunk plays today. And I have to go back and count. Jason, maybe you know offhand, but the Texans got a lot of those today. And certainly, look, there's a reason why Dorsett, there's a reason why Akins and even Jordan at times was featured in the offense today. It's a game plan offense. That's what you have to do. They just felt like they could take advantage of some situations with those guys. I think it's going to be really interesting to see going forward with the Texans and how, if it's maybe an adjustment that Pep Hamilton made with some of the route concepts, play calls, giving Mills some easier looks that don't always involve just checking the ball down to a Burkhead or a Pierce or a tight end in the flat. I want to see what this team can do over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks before maybe defenses see something and they're able to adjust, because I like what I saw today and kind of scratching my head and wondering why, guys, we couldn't see this a little bit more regular.
Well, speaking of something you couldn't see a little bit more regular, this has us all scratching our head. Again, this isn't hindsight. We said it all in the preseason going into the year, week 1, week 2, during the bye. We've said it every week. Why is Rex Burkhead so heavily involved in the receiving game? Well, I know it was junk time today, but this may blow some of the listeners' mind. Rex Burkhead tied for the lead in receptions on the day. He had 5 receptions on 6 targets. You know how many yards he got? 11. So what have we always said? They're like, well, what are you going to do? Who are you going to bring in? Dare. I mean, he's the next man up, right? This is his role he's done throughout his NFL career. Rex has never been a receiving back. It's a relationship hire. And so it's frustrating. A lot of your listeners are not going to know this because they probably tuned out in the fourth quarter. And yes, it was junk time, but they finally threw Dare the ball. He had as many catches as Rex Burkhead. Burkhead and Dare tied for the team lead with 5 receptions. Burkhead had 11 yards. Dare had 64. This has been there all year. This is not hindsight. This is bad, whether you want to call it front office or coaching. Whoever made the decision with Burkhead to be this heavily involved is a critical part of them being 1-4-1 instead of right there in the hunt in the AFC South. A couple of those 50-50 games go the other way if Rex Burkhead isn't this heavily involved.
I call him Scapegoat Rex, Jace. That's what I've been using as his nickname. And not saying that anybody's wrong about that, but it just seems like every week we talk about it. Every week we go through the same thing, and every week it's the same. I mean, Sean's talked about it ad nauseum. Yeah, we just don't get it. I don't get it. Nobody gets it. Raiders drive down
at this point. Well, at this point, it's a dead topic, because at this point your season's over. Listen, I don't need to hear Texans fans and the front office all that, hey, we're trying to fight, we're going to come back 1 week at a time, we can still get back in a. The trade deadline is in 9 days. Everything in business has a date. You had your time coming out of the bye, early rested. You lost to the worst team in the AFC by double digits, almost 3 touchdowns is what you lost by, 18 points. And so the thing is that I it's not going to be fair to Davis Mills, but at this point it's business, and you're probably going to try to sell off Brandin Cooks if you can get the return. Get that contract off your books, because you're not playing for anything this year.
Real quick on that, and I know you want to move on, Robert, but it's just a really interesting thing. It is business. You're 100% right, Jason.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest questions that we discussed ad nauseum coming into this season, and I asked it a number of times, are the Texans putting Davis Mills in the best possible situation to succeed? Well, if you're trading away your top receiver, then going forward, the answer is no. You're limiting the sample size, which was already, you can kind of excuse away, as Lovey has done and Pep has done, talking about last year's experience with Davis Mills. Well, I think it was Pep who a few weeks back, Jason, if you remember, in a press conference said, well, technically he's still a rookie, okay. But then you're going to take away one of his top targets in Cooks potentially. And, rightfully so, to be quite honest with you, he's probably, his days of being traded for 1s and 2s is probably over, Jason. But if the Texans can get a 3 and maybe another late round pick in exchange for Brandin Cooks, then I don't see any reason why you don't do that. Maybe it just comes down to accepting and believing that the Texans know exactly what we know and have known for a few weeks now, that Davis Mills is not the guy. And they've got to set themselves up and get as much draft capital as possible. And you play this thing out, and your real season starts draft day 1.
Yeah, and if they trade him now, there could be no Cooks or Nico Collins for him to throw to, and then we can see Philip Dorsett dropping passes and committing penalties on a consistent basis. And
you're seeing Cooks, but you're paying Cooks $20 million, and you're seeing him among the league leaders in drops. What's the return on investment? They're like, well, you need to give Davis Mills. Cooks has got his worst catch rate of his career. You've got a $20 million contract on a wide receiver that you get that off your books. Per over the cap, Texans are 7th in salary cap space next year and 1st in 2024. Cap rolls over. Continue to get that and get that pick. And I think because if you wait till after the deadline, try to trade them in the offseason or something else, you're not getting the return. Like Shaun said, you're probably getting a 4th or 5th or something else because they're thinking a contract. But if there are 4 teams that's actually in the hunt for a Super Bowl, they're not worried future contract. They can do a salary cap Olympics to work things out, and they'll give you a late second. I truly believe they'll give you a late second because it's going to be like 60 to 64th if they really think they're playing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I was playing a little devil's advocate, but Christian McCaffrey got way more than I thought he would get. And I'm not saying Brandin Cooks is in that category, but it's just like,
no, I understand. Wow. But the injury history, I understand, Robert.
So, just last couple of things. Raiders drive it down pretty easily on the next drive. Josh Jacobs runs it in from the 4. You guys mentioned the next drive was the Philip Dorsett throw, which I thought might have been the best throw that Davis Mills has made in his entire career. But then for the 3rd straight drive, Raiders go down the field for a touchdown. Josh Jacobs again, exclamation. The defense gives up 4 drives in a row of 75 yards or more. And Jason, you've talked about this on the Houston's football show. Lovey doesn't like to admit it, but it's been a bend but don't break defense. But they broke today.
They broke. Well stated, perfectly stated. It's I would say the exact same verbiage you used. It's been a bend but don't break defense, and today they broke. Nothing for me to add. Perfectly stated.
Texans, at this point, we're going to go for it on 4th and 1 from their own 34. I had no issue. Let's play like we don't care because there's nothing at stake. But Kenyon Green, the rookie, costly false start, only the 2nd penalty the Texans had to that point. But, again, they are so timely, these penalties that the Texans have. They're so timely bad. And then the next Raiders drive, 4th and 1, Roy Lopez jumps, another massive penalty. And, of course, Josh Jacobs, touchdown, 4 straight touchdown drives of more than 75 yards. Next drive is the Davis Mills pick 6. But I'll just say this, Jason. Yeah, I get it. It's the 4th quarter and he does it again. And on that one particular throw, but I just got to say, this game, except for that one throw, I really had no issues with anything he did. If he played like this, Jason, the rest of the season, this team would have at least 2 more wins and maybe 3 more wins. I've just got to accept as hey, let's give this kid credit because he did play great in this game and he didn't get a lot of help. Brandin Cooks screwed him. Kenyon Green screwed him at, these critical situations. It was not Davis Mills' fault. It was other guys. And, if he could be this guy every week, we would be getting excited about him, wouldn't we?
We absolutely would be. But you also need a lot of these times. We've seen Davis Mills flash. We've seen him do good things. You need him to turn into wins. And they're not turning into wins. And that's not on Davis Mills. Wins aren't a quarterback stat, like the adage that people have made famous now. But for me, where you're at as a franchise, it's not fair to the human being Davis Mills. But again, this is a billion-dollar business, and the best franchises are proactive, not reactive. And this front office with the Texans comes from one of the most proactive franchises. They'll take Hall of Famers and trade them when they see the decline with their eyes, and it's not even proven. They'll take that risk. Sometimes they'll burn them, sometimes they won't. But that's who's making these decisions now. And I think it's a proactive franchise that understands that. Robert, you said they could win 2-3 more games. If Mills is playing like this and Cooks is there, why would you want to win 2 or 3 more games? You're not gonna make a playoff spot Yeah, you've had the bye. You keep making the same mistakes. This is a horrific defense. Sean's I'm not to tell all your business, but Sean's coached for so many years. Sean, this isn't meant as disrespect to the Texans organization, but it's the only comparison I can make. That's a D3 college defense making the same mistake 7 weeks into an NFL season where they don't stop the edges. I mean, they run a jet sweep to a wide receiver. Why? Because you see every week it works against the Texans, and then you flip it and run it towards the other side. I mean, Desmond King doesn't make a super tackle. He does it. 2 4th-and-1s, both sides of the ball, and critical penalties that cost you. And in a game of inches, they make every mistake, and it's always in the fourth quarter, and it's different people every time. That's the identity of the team when it's not the same person.
At the end of the day, you mentioned this earlier too, Jayson, both offensively and defensively, you have a bunch of guys on this team. For one, we all understand at this point, this is about a youth movement, not just in the linebacker core, but look at all the young guys just on defense and offense all across the board that are playing. Okay. This is about a youth movement, as it should be. This is what you want to see in a rebuild. The most maddening thing is you're able to talk about, a good number of maybe 5 to 7 plays of what it comes down to that kind of decides some of these games. That just drives us crazy, right? But when you talk about the integrity or lack thereof of this Lovie Smith defense, well, you're trusting guys to make exceptional plays and be consistently disciplined. Well, you're talking about like elite players. If you were consistently disciplined, if you were making every tackle, if you weren't missing tackles, if you weren't dropping would be, could be, should be interceptions, then you're talking about a really good player and a really good defense. Well, the Texans don't have a lot of those guys. I've been noticing for about 4 or 5 weeks that it makes me crazy. And even Jerry Hughes, a 13-year veteran, is making some ill-disciplined rookie type mistakes. And you just have to accept it for what it is. I mean, he is a 13-year veteran. You're trying to squeeze every last little drop you possibly can out of him. But the lack of integrity on those edge rushers when they're reading the ball is away from them, not to stay disciplined and allow nothing to come back your way. You make sure that ball commits past the line of scrimmage. That's basic stuff. And these are fundamental plays, mistakes that the Texans are routinely making throughout games that are costly. They don't show up in the box score. You don't see why exactly this happened, but that is it's those reasons alone that add up. Why you give a team a 3rd and short opportunity or a 2nd and inches opportunity. Good teams are going to take advantage of those. And not to say that the Raiders are a good team, but they're better than you. And they showed that they were better than you today. They played how they were supposed to play, and that is capitalized on silly mistakes.
I just want to clarify one thing that Jayson said before. I'm not saying Davis Mills wins 2 or 3 more games the rest of the year if he plays like this. I'm saying Davis Mills has 2 or 3 wins this year. And if Davis Mills plays like this the rest of the year, then
Gotcha.
I don't have to draft a stupid quarterback, and I don't have to wait 2 or 3 more years to develop that guy. And I'm going to be 95 years old before the Texans are going to be any good again. I'm trying to live my best life over here, Jayson. And I want Davis Mills to succeed as bad as anybody. I do not hate this guy. I want him to do well. And he's got a lot of physical tools. This part, the noggin, the brain is the one problem. And the guy that I saw today, except for that, like I said, except for the one interception, if I could have just seen that guy against, I don't know, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Colts, I mean, what a difference all of those games would have made. They all came down to 1 or 2 possessions. And Davis Mills was terrible for most of those 3 games. Of those games. This game, he was really good, I thought, for 3 quarters. And look, Davis Mills last year, I think that was kind of a stupid comment, Sean. Technically, that the coach said technically he's a rookie quarterback. I mean, come on. What do you mean technically? It's the 2nd year. He's been playing in the NFL for 2 years. He played most of the games last year. Joe Burrow played just about as many games his first year. In the 2nd year, that guy was in a Super Bowl. That's what I know. Now, I granted all of that, but Davis Mills had garbage last year. He had garbage to work with. That wasn't fair for any guy. And, it's not great this year, but it's way better. And, you just want to see so bad, Jayson. You want to see him, put this together just for a little bit, just so we can at least think about, man, if we didn't have to draft a quarterback, and we could get, I don't know, some linebackers, any linebackers, like guys, I don't care. There's got to be some guys over at Stratford High School that can do a better job. We got to find some other positions on this team. And if you don't have to draft a quarterback and you don't have to play quarterback roulette and look, I've watched the NFL, all these different games. There's so many terrible offenses and bad quarterbacks right now. It is disgusting to watch most of these games. It's not like there's a bunch of great quarterbacks out there. So, we think that Davis Mills is like the worst of the worst, but I mean, geez, look around the NFL. It's bad. And it's not just guys that are in their first or second year that are bad. Guys all over the league, veterans, everybody. Tom Brady hasn't exactly had a light him up kind of year. So Aaron Rodgers hasn't had a light him up kind of year. So if you could just get some mediocre Davis Mills quarterback play, I mean, it sounds bad, but I'll take mediocre right now.
Well, will Nick Caserio take mediocre? I mean, we're talking about a guy who plays for Super Bowl in a city where he's trying to change the mindset where they played for division championships. They literally have, you guys know it, they literally have AFC South banners hanging in their stadium because they've never even been to an AFC championship in their 20 years into this. So you talk about like, hey, I don't want to wait until I'm 95 before they got a quarterback developing. Well, they've invested. Like, let's not talk about what Davis Mills might have been or what he could be or anything else. What have the Texans invested? A third-round pick. Davis Mills is a third-round pick. First-round picks. Josh Rosen and Geno. Oh, I know Geno was supposed to go first. I think he slid to the second back then. But through that entire draft process, they were talking about him as the number one quarterback in the draft. And when he didn't show it early, he got lost among the backups in the NFL until this year and nobody expected him to be good. It's just the way the NFL is. It's $1 billion business. And yes, there is some horrific quarterback play around the NFL. None of those teams are going to play for a championship this year. And if you look at who wins Super Bowls, you got to have a difference maker in there to play for Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. If we're still questioning if Davis Mills can get over being shook, here in year 2 late in games, then I have no problem if they decide like, hey, we're going to give you Tyler Johnson, Philip Dorsett, Jalen Camp, Johnny Johnson, Davion Davis, and everybody else on the practice squad. And this is what you got to work with to prove that this is your job. If not, we're using a first-round pick. Hey, that's the business.
Yeah, all good points, man. There's not much to say to that. And I just want to see what a guy is really. And I think that's what we're seeing with Davis Mills. And as long as he's able to stay healthy and he's given opportunities to go out there and make decisions and make plays, whether he makes them or not, that's who he is. I don't want to be smoke screened here. I don't want window dressing. I want to see what the real deal is so you can make a real business decision come draft day. And wherever your position is, wherever you think you can pivot to, you get the best guy available. And if it's a quarterback, then you go out and get you a Bryce Young. You go out and get a C.J. Stroud or Will Levis or whoever it is, whoever the Texans deem to be the best guy, do it. I don't need to see mediocre right now. I don't need to see something that is not going to be sustainable. I don't know if you guys buy into this, but we all watch enough football. We all hear enough of the talking heads, the experts say. It's like I've heard countless times over the last few years, hey, there's backup quarterbacks for a reason. It's okay to not be a starter. I wrote this last week in my column on sportsradio610.com. It's okay if Davis Mills is not a good quarterback at the NFL level and can be a starter. That's fine. He's a guy that's played high school. He's a guy that's played limited college. And he's got an opportunity as a third-round pick to play for one of the worst organizations in the NFL that's trying to rebuild and get out of that moniker. It's okay if he's not going to be any good. You just have to make sure that he's not the guy. And that's what I want this season to be about. You can develop, you can create game plan for quarterbacks that can get it done for 3 or 4 games. Hashtag Cooper Rush, Dallas Cowboys. Looks like Dak came back at just the right time. There's plenty of those examples every single year. And it's fine if Davis Mills is just another one of those guys, because maybe, guys, he doesn't put it all together and become a really good backup for another 2 or 3 years. But if he's good enough, if he belongs, he'll get another opportunity. I just don't think he's going to be here as a Houston Texan. And if you're the Texans, you just hope he's healthy enough and plays it out, and we get the best possible draft position that this organization can, and you make a great decision.
One guy that we haven't talked about at all from this game, and I'm just kind of curious, Jayson, because I don't see him in the stats at all, and he looked like he had a pretty good game against the Jags. Garrett Wallow. What are your thoughts on Garrett Wallow overall as a player and his future?
Well, you're not going to see Garrett a lot out there because he's a sub-package linebacker. So when your base package, you're going to see mostly Christian Kirksey, and Christian Harris now, with him being in the mix, and obviously the rotation there. But when they go to that base defense, which are probably in 20-30% of the time, Wallow will come in as that third linebacker. When he's been in there, he had a run blitz, I think it was, where he just flew through the line. So I like some of the things. I need to really go back and study it to see if there's errors, if there's any mistakes, anything like that. But on the few reps, I did see him flash a couple times, not only this week, but in past weeks as well.
Sounds good. Well, tell people about the Houston Football Show, what you guys are doing over there. And I love Aaron, got to know him over the years going out to Texans, and just really excited to hear you guys every week with the show.
Yeah, we host the Houston Football Show, brought to you by Prime Social Poker Club and Inside Edge NFL. And it's yearly, once a week, year-round, 52 weeks a year, Texans Insider Show that blends Aaron's inside information with my background in sports radio and scout evaluation and everything. We blend it together to give you a once a week, every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, Texans Insider Show called the Houston Football Show. So again, you can come back all year long, every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central Time, Houston Football Show. Find on any podcast platform. Check us out. Robert, Shaun, I appreciate you guys having me on as always.
Shaun, we're going to see you again here in a few days, but hey, I've got some live Astros postgame show later tonight, and hopefully it's not going to be around midnight tonight. Oh no,
you're going to have 18 minutes.
I want to join you guys and talk some ball, but I'm like in between. It's like I just put a 2-year-old down after a really long day, and as hyped up as I've been after these games, I really don't want to wake the kid up. So if I do join you, it's going to be via my back patio. And I might have a slight whisper going on because I don't want to wake neighbors or a kid.
Nice.
Oh my God. Just please, let's get this game under like 4 hours or something tonight. It's a long day, but looking forward to talking to you again, Shaun, in the middle of the week. And we'll catch up with you, Jayson, again. We'd love to get you down the line and hope we can do it. But thanks to both of you guys for joining me for this one. That's it for Houston Sports Talk's live Texans postgame show. A sad one. The Texans dropped this one 38-20. It was fun for a while, but again, Texans end up on the losing end. We'll talk to you again soon.
Go straight.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.